Yeah. Recording is on. People are still joining. Colonel Saab is here. So as always, anybody who has a question to ask to our speaker can put their questions in the chat box. जितना हमें time allow कर पाएगा, we'll be picking up questions from there. So any kind of question that you have, you can type down there in the chat box. Thank you, Rudra. We'll be starting really soon. It's a kind request to keep your microphones on mute at all the times unless prompted.
Abhishek, I guess we are good to go. Yeah?
I think we're good to go.
We should start. Right?
It's recording. Prachi, you should start now.
Raghuveer Singh sir, I request you to kindly turn off your camera if it's okay. Yes. So good evening everyone. I am Prachi Kohli, and the guy you've seen on your screen named Prachi Kohli is not Prachi Kohli actually. So this is the real me. I'm the admin and content head at Legally Yours, and on behalf of the entire team, I extend a warm virtual welcome to you all. Cases of communal and religious based riots are not new to India, whether they were in 84, 92, 2002, or 2020 itself. While these were the major ones that entailed partition of many families, they were not the only ones. Independent India has in fact been a land of more than 50 communal and election based riots. Section 146 and 147 of the Indian Penal Code penalizes the offense of riot based violence and even participation. In fact, merely being a part of the very mob is enough to be charged with the act of rioting under Section 146 IPC. Further, Section 148 IPC deals with much serious forms of rioting wherein the rioters are armed with deadly weapons or there is an apprehension of death. However, there is a long gap between such penalizations and the reality. The survivors of such riots become a victim first at the hands of the mob, then the system. To enlighten us on the real life intricacies involved in such cases, we have amongst us our guest speaker, an eminent advocate and a brilliant legal professional, Advocate Harpreet Singh Hora, to talk about the struggles of riot survivors. Advocate Hora is a promising young lawyer, a proud alumni of the Faculty of Law, Delhi University, who has been fighting cases on behalf of the victims and survivors of 1984 anti-Sikh riots, where the ex-parliamentarian Mr. Sajjan Kumar had been convicted along with the Congress councillor Balwant Khokar and Congress MLA late Mahendra Yadav and three others. Sir has also represented its survivors of Mahipalpur killings during 84 anti-Sikh riots, wherein the trial court awarded death penalty and life imprisonment to the accused in 2018. Sir, your other line of cases include working for prison reforms, including representing the prisoners for installation of cameras in Tihar jail, in environmental cases and other cases for community welfare. Sir has also represented the student community in Delhi University, Jamia Millia Islamia and JBMS in cases of entrance injustices, examinations and other student issues. In fact, he has also been the representing counsel in Delhi High Court case where the High Court, via an interim order, granted rights of wearing a kara and a kirpan to 6 students during the NEET examinations in 2018. On behalf of the entire team and each participant present here, I welcome you, sir. Advocate Hora will be in conversation with our moderator, Mr. Gurkaran Singh, who is the content and research head at Legally Yours. They will be conversing on the riot cases in the history of India, the struggles faced by the survivors, the role of the system and agencies involved, and some up close lawyering experiences for you all. I now request Gurkaran to kindly commence today's session.
Thank you, Prachi, for such an insightful introduction. Before I commence with the session, on behalf of the whole team, would like to express my sincere gratitude to Advocate Sardar Harpreet Singh Hora for accepting our invitation to be a part of this initiative. So it is an honor for us to share the same platform as you. Before I commence with the session, I would acknowledge the efforts put in by our team for introducing such topics to the new generation lawyers, as 1984 happened when I guess most of the participants were not even born. So before I commence with the session, the first question which I would like to ask you is that, as a young and a first generation lawyer, what has been your overall journal experience in handling the riot cases?
Thank you, Gurkaran. I'd first like to express my gratitude to you and your team for organizing this webinar and for the kind invitation which you have extended. I'm so grateful to you and your team. I'll begin by answering from a very personal level of because even I was not born back when 84 happened. So this is sort of a peculiar experience which I'd like to talk about. So I'd say more or less it has been more of a mixed experience. I'd neither rate it on the positive side nor on the negative side. Reason being, if I talk from the perspective of a young legal professional, although there's a lot to learn when you deal with certain cases, specifically when I talk about 1984, which involves such entry cases in law. But as far as the downside of that is concerned, it also entails having first-hand accounts of victims, survivors, and witnesses of that violence, which happened like more than 3.5 decades ago. And when you witness the trauma and the pain these people have first-hand experienced, like they have seen their fathers, their sons, their mothers, their sisters getting killed in front of their eyes. For example, the Mahipalpur and the Kadkaduma case, which Prachi mentioned. So when you sit down with them, when you hear their stories, the incidents, the details, it actually gives you a unique way to look at life, to look at the world around you. It also infuses a sense of I'd say a negative side of the system, which the way the system has treated them. And when I say the system, I'd include the administration when it comes to give compensation to them, because see, when this violence had taken place for, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 days, 15 days, it is not about how the police or the protectors of law had acted during those days, but also how we as a society, as a system, as a nation, as a state has reacted to their pains. I'd give you an example for that. There is this former New York Times bureau chief in New Delhi, Miss Barbara Crossett, who had mentioned while talking about 1984. She said, and I'll read out exactly. She said, and that I quote, almost as many Sikhs died in a few days in India in 1984 than all the deaths and disappearances in child during the 17-year-long military rule of General Augusto Pinochet between 1973 and 1990. She later published, before that had published a paper, India's Sikhs Still Waiting for Justice. So you see, and I do not want to derail the trajectory of this conversation, but just to give you a brief about when I say how we respond to this type of violence, also matters to give a message as to how we intend to reconcile with the victims and survivors. You may call it engineered violence, orchestrated killings, targeted killings, induced violence. The manner in which we use a particular terminology, which becomes part of the larger narrative down the line, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line, also shows our intent. How do we intend to deal with these type of issues? For example, it has been a topic of discussion amongst the Sikh community and the Sikh diaspora residing outside India as well, to term this violence as genocide. Now, I'd also quote certain excerpts from the Delhi High Court judgment of 2018, where Mr. Sajjan Kumar was convicted. As far as genocide was concerned, the term genocide is concerned. So you see, Ontario Legislative Assembly had passed a resolution. Then the Delhi Legislative Assembly, there was a resolution moved in Delhi Legislative Assembly as well. Certain sections of media had also reported that Mr. Rajnath Singh in 2014 December had also called this as a genocide. So the manner in which we respond to this as a society, as authorities, and as state also sends a strong message to the victims, because generally when the victim comes to us, when we have to listen to their stories and their harrowing experience which they had, the first thing they say is कि हमें तो लगता है कि हम अपने लोगों के बीच में नहीं थे उस वक्त. So this is generally the experience which people had during those times. So I believe it. So that's why I believe it would be fair to call it a mixed type of experience handling this type of cases.
So, as you have already mentioned, what are the legal struggles for the victims of these kind of rights?
Well, see, Gurkaran, when violence, cognizable offences, for example, if I talk about the Lalita Khari judgment, when cognizable offences had taken place, the first thing that sets the legal machinery into motion is the registration of an FIR, or when the complaints get converted into an FIR. From a lawyer's point of view, or from the victim as well, when you say that even FIRs are not getting registered, then the chances for getting justice gets even more bleak. Now, there are certain instances, for example, if I start from Ved Marwaha's committee in 1984 to Nanavati Commission in 2000, or more recent being Justice S.N. Dhingra's committee in 2018 by the Supreme Court order itself. So you see, firstly, the manner in which police handled these cases, that there have been certain allegations and there have been convictions on the basis of these testimonies, that the police not only acted as a mute spectator, but the police acted in complacency with in connivance with the perpetrators. There have been the Rajnagar killings, if I talk about, the Mahipalpur killings, if I talk about. Then in Justice S.N. Dhingra's report as well. Now, you see, if somebody, the first point of contact which you have to save yourself or your property is the police, the nearest police station or the nearest policeman. So if somebody is witnessing a cognizable offense being taking place in front of his own eyes, when his own family members are being killed, brutalized, or raped for that matter, or being burnt alive, and you see the police has been never acting, so that also gives you a feeling at that spot itself that you would never get justice. Why? Because police is not only meant to protect you, but police is the agency which would also be investigating this case. And the government under whose instructions and directions the police work is the same government under whom the prosecutions would also take place. So that is, I believe, the first and foremost problem that the victims had faced. Secondly, if for example, if I talk about Justice Dhingra's report, now you see the manner in which the authorities have responded after the riots. 114, and now I'm just giving you one example. This is tip of the iceberg. Justice Dhingra's report had divided the cases into 3 different categories: damage to property, then murders with damage to property, murders without damage to property. 114 cases for property damage had come to the fore at that time. 114 cases only for damage to property. 114 में से 102 cases police said that we are filing an untraced report. The police could never trace. Now you see what makes me sad as a citizen, as a human being, जब मैं एक victim के perspective से इस चीज को देखता हूँ, that Justice Dhingra now has also said that the manner in which the investigations have taken place, certain records have been weeded out and now there is no possibility of reconstructing them. The report says that now there is no possibility of further investigation in those cases. So in a way, it would be fair and square if I can say that if there is no possibility of further investigation, now I say that there is no possibility of justice to those people who have suffered those particular crimes have been committed upon them. Now you see, I'll give you another example. This is a category of victims which generally is not talked about. those people who were in the transit when these incidents had taken place, as in moving from one place to another. There were 5 different big or small police stations in Delhi in all. It has been recorded that 71 people from the Sikh community were dragged out of the trains. They were travelers, they were passengers, they were dragged out of the trains and they were killed. Now, shockingly, if you can make a guess that how many people did police book for this? How many people did police identify for this? If there are 71 people whom have been killed, you could say maybe police identified 50 perpetrators, 50 criminals, 50 accused persons. What is shocking and unfortunate is police did not, Karan, and I'm saying this on record, police did not even identify one person. Now, in the first week of November, I was in conversation with somebody from a very reputed media house, and I told her that what makes me sad when we read those files and get in conversation with these people is कि जब लोग ये कहते हैं ना कि नवंबर में लाशें ही लाशें बिछी थी दिल्ली शहर में, हैरानी की बात है कि इतने साल बाद कोई कातिल भी नहीं मिला. So this is now on record that 71 people have been killed in transit. You have RPF, you have police stations, in railway stations, you have adequate security, and not even one person had been identified even after 35 years. There are 2 more, apart from the threat to witnesses, which has been a major setback to the prosecution agencies as well. Now, there has been 2 aspects which I'd like to touch upon relating to the victims, because now I am saying this from my own personal experience on the levels of how families have handled these. I come from a family who has been affected in 1984 themselves. We have half of our family living in another part of India and half of our family had migrated to Punjab then. So you see, not only that generation gets affected, but their generations to come, they are pushed into a circle of poverty, illiteracy. They are pushed into a circle of disenfranchisement, you see. Then when these people do not get justice even after the passage of 35 years, and I'm only talking about justice, I'm not talking about vendetta or vengeance. In the terms of justice, I say justice in terms of criminal justice. Then they get a feeling of alienation from the state as well as from the society itself. I'd just to wrap the answer to this question, when the conviction of Mr. Kumar had happened from Delhi High Court, there's an article, I believe, probably by the Hindu, wherein they had quoted one gentleman named Amarjeet Singh, who was also one of the directly affected members of the community who had been murdered during 1984. So he had said that, बेटा तुम्हें ये नहीं पता कि कल अखबार में जो खबर आने वाली ना, the next day the news which was supposed to be covered was about the conviction of Mr. Kumar and the other accused person. So he had said that, बेटा कल अखबार में जो खबर आने वाली है तुम्हें नहीं पता हमने कितने साल इस खबर को फ्रंट पेज पे देखने का इंतजार किया. So you see, more than 34 years had passed at that time, and this is what Amarjeet Singh is telling to a reporter and to his lawyer at that time, जो उस टाइम पे सज्जन कुमार, मिस्टर कुमार की कन्विक्शन के बाद रिपोर्ट हुआ था. So this, I believe, has been the challenges which the victims have faced on the. I'd also give you another example. Just to wrap this up, I again do not want to extend this answer, but because I have had so many experiences which I have heard from people. So this is one of the witnesses in Mr. Kumar's case and she had told me कि उनके बेटे को और उनके हस्बैंड को मार दिया गया था और इतना वो डर गई थी उस टाइम पे कि उनका, because सिखों में अंतिम संस्कार किया जाता था, डेड बॉडीज आर बर्न्ड ऑन अ फायर, चिता में. एंड शी सेड कि मुझे इतना भी पता था कि इससे पहले कि वो डेड बॉडी को खराब करते, मैंने घर से अपना फर्नीचर और एक औरत जिसका बच्चा, उसका पति उसके घर आग के सामने मार दिया गया उसके घर के आगे, उसने बोला कि मैंने अपना फर्नीचर अपने घर के बाहर निकाला, उनकी जगह बनाई, उनको वहीं पे जला दिया, कहीं उसकी बॉडी भी ना उठा के लिए. There was another case which I had come to later on as far as the trial in Katkaduma case is concerned, where 7 members of the same family were killed, and FIRs were not filed at that times. There were affidavits filed, then those got converted into FIRs. So there have been certain challenges which the victims have faced, and when you would hear those first-hand accounts, it actually would send the feelings of shock and disgust and I'd say, I mean, what did you say? It is natural consequences to bring the feeling of alienation from the state and the authorities and the society as far as the victims are concerned. Then there were certain people as well, there was a certain category of people as well who had migrated to Punjab then, although this is a little bit off the track from this topic, but who had the children who were picked up later by the police because Punjab had seen militancy for the next 9 to 10 years after 84. There were certain young boys of 15, 16, 18 years old. You see the Mr. Jaswant Singh Khalada's report. There have been forced disappearances by police and authorities and security forces. So there were not only one generation was eliminated during the 1984 riots or genocide, if you may call it, but the next generation has also faced the same brutality either by the state or by the society. So all in all, you have actually perpetrated trauma on not only one generation but 2 or 3 generations by this, I would say.
Can it be inferred that 1984 actually set a template for all the other communal rights which were to be followed in the country? And can some parallels be drawn between 1984, 2002 and 2020 riots?
Well, to quote that, whether if I'd say the template as far as the happenings during those days of genocide are concerned, loosely you can say yes, but the aftermath of that violence, and sadly, now I would have to say complete yes to your question. The reason being, and this is not what I am saying from my personal experience, now I'd quote the judges of the Delhi High Court and I'd read page 193 of Mr. Kumar's conviction judgment. I'd read that the exact sentence which is written in the judgment, if you would permit me. It says, para 367 says, in India, the riots in early November 1984, in which in Delhi alone, so and so number of Sikhs and nearly so and so all over the country were brutally murdered, was neither, and now this Gurkaran, this deserves attention, was neither the first instance of a mass crime nor tragically the last. The next 2 lines says, there has been a familiar pattern of mass killings in Mumbai in 1993, in Gujarat in 2002, in Kandhamal, Odisha in 2008, and in Muzaffarnagar in UP in 2013. Now, this judgment is predating the 2020 violence in Delhi. But if you read the Delhi Minority Commission's report as well, and the kind of allegations which the people have leveled, that the houses and the properties were marked, we had called the police department and we received no assistance from them. There were people who had gathered into groups, and then we had informed the securities that some untoward incidents may happen, and even then the police did not act. So yes, I'd say it has set that thing into motion that these type of killings are possible in India. What troubles me as a human being is that what lessons we have learned out of it. This also poses a question to me as a lawyer, as a citizen, as a human being. So that is a problem, that if something had happened, the problem is not that something happened in 1984. The problem is, what do we learn out of 1984? If all of us are on the same page that whatever happened in 1984 is something which should not happen with anybody in any part of the world, be it in Rwanda, in South Africa, in Argentina, or any part of the world, the question is, what do we learn out of it? Have we become a society so mature, or have we learned something from that in those last 25, 30 years? Had we learned that this should not have happened? Had we as a country, as a governing state, learned anything out of it? If that was the case, then the manner in which the authorities acted in 1984 should have never repeated. And as recorded in the Delhi High Court's judgment, there was a similar pattern of mass killings in Mumbai, in Odisha, in Muzaffarnagar. And then I'd say, if you read the Delhi Minority Commission report, in Delhi in 2020 as well.
If you can handle that. Somebody is, looking to present the screen.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I just revoked the permissions. Okay.
No issues. Please
Sorry,
go ahead.
I'm really sorry, sir. Please continue.
Please go ahead. That's okay.
Please continue.
Yes, Gurkar. Over to you.
So basically, the another question is, there is a colony in Delhi which most of the people even don't know about, which is known as Tilak Vihar. Or
Widow colony.
Widow colony, yes. So, sir, can you share some experiences about what you faced when you talk to the residents of Tilak Vihar? Because there is, I think, no other example in the world which has a, widow colony right in middle of a capital state, and most of the people even don't know that there exists such a colony.
So see, calling it there, as I began my talk with saying that there has been a discussion on calling it a genocide, a riot, a crimes against humanity. So when I talk about it, I would say, Gurkaran, as far as the language for that is concerned, when we say कि 84 का दंगा हुआ, 1984 riots, those people would specifically point you out. If you would see, there is a gentleman on my Facebook as well who has commented yesterday on my Facebook stating that it was a genocide. These are the people who have been living with that trauma for the last 35, 36 years. So you see, riots are either spontaneous, they are anomalous, or disorganized generally. As far as the as far as the accounts from these people are concerned, recorded or not recorded is a separate question. After the killing of Mrs. Gandhi on 31st of October, when the death was announced in evening, there have been some on and off incidents of violence against the Sikhs in Delhi on the same day, the same night. But what suddenly happened in the wee hours, early morning of 1st of November is what has actually changed the entire scenario, what happened in 1982. When you talk to those people, you would actually hear the stories that how, now this may be on record, this may not be on record. There were certain FIRs which were never filed, but people had filed affidavits to that effect. There have been people who have written books to certify that. Has been a ex-MLA of the Delhi Legislative Assembly as well. Mr. Sanjay Suri from the Indian Express or Times, I believe. I'm not sure about the organization. He had authored a book on it. So when you would listen to their experiences, you would see that there has been a pattern of killing. When I say a pattern of killing, I'll draw an analogy under that again from the Delhi High Court judgment itself. When we talk about when the judgment talked about crime against humanity, it says that it was acknowledged, crime against humanity, I'm saying, was acknowledged for the first time in a joint declaration by Britain, Russia, and France on 28th of May 1915 against the government of Turkey. Following the large scale, and now this is important, with that deserves attention, is following the large scale killing of Armenians by the Kurds and Turks with the assistance and connivance of the Ottoman administration. The declaration termed the killings as a crime against humanity and civilization, for which all the members of the Turkish government will be held responsible together with its agents implicated in the massacres. Now you see, there were people, there were women, there were men, there were kids who had nothing to take with Mrs. Gandhi or the news of her death, or with Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, or with Mr. Sajjan Kumar, or Mr. Jagdish Titler, or Mr. Kamal Nath, or Balwan Khokar, or Mahendra Yadav, or anybody for that. I'd again touch this point if while talking about the Kadka Duma trial. That's a very interesting case, and that is the case which I'm seeing from the very scratch itself, and that is why I'm mentioning it again. So you see, they had nothing to take with these people. But when you see that, you wake up in the morning and you see, और कुछ लोगों ने ऐसा भी डिस्क्राइब किया होगा, हम जब अपनी छत पे गए तो हमें आसपास सिर्फ धुआं ही धुआं दिख रहा था. तो हमने वहां पर सही मायने में देखा कि अब हमारी मौत हमारे करीब. Secondly, as far as the experience of those people are concerned, with the conviction which had happened through the judgment of the Delhi High Court, there is one more incident which I'd like to tell you about. So there was this gentleman who was killed. I would not name the victim. So he was killed. He was burnt. Basically, the Sikhs had gathered in a Gurdwara, because the Gurdwara, apart from acting a religious place, also act as one of the places for community gathering for Sikhs. So they had gathered in the Gurdwara, firstly to have a united front, and secondly to protect their religious place from any upcoming attack. So then the police had come, and the police had assured them proper security, and the police asked them to get dispersed. Now when they had dispersed, the police went away. The rioters had followed those gentlemen to their houses and had marked those houses. They dragged the gentleman, dragged him out of his home, set him on fire. There was a nala, drain along across that road. Now, while his body was set on fire, he ran away and jumped in the nala itself. One or two people went inside the nala, dragged him out. He was half burnt, set him on fire again. He again did the same, jumped into the nala, and he was more than half burnt. This I am saying because his daughter had witnessed her father getting burnt. They came out. There was one gentleman from the police who was standing there. Now, while this chaos was happening, they had lost the packet of matchstick, matches ka dabba. सो दे सेड कि हमें माचिस नहीं मिल रही, इसको फिर से आग लगाएंगे तीसरी बार। तो पुलिस वाला सेज कि तुमसे एक काम नहीं होता, तुमसे तो एक आदमी नहीं जलाया जा रहा इतने लोगों से। एंड द वुमन, she was a girl back then of I believe 12 or 14 years of age. She has been an eyewitness in one of our important cases. I would not name that. So she has seen her father being killed in this manner. So there are people who have witnessed this type of violence, and there are countless stories. You would see the stories after every step, after every house. You would have these kind of similar spine-chilling stories in those colonies and from those people.
So, sir, as you already mentioned, that the traumas of the victims or the traumas of the survivors is even more than than those who were killed in the riots. So, sir, in most of these cases, these survivors are also the sole witness of the incident.
Right.
So, what kind of pressure do they face when you have to testify in the court? Because somebody, as I was hearing somebody, कि जिसने अपने घर से अपने अपनों को आग दी हो, लाशें जिसने फर्नीचर से जलाया हो, वो कम से कम those won't be threatened by money. So what kind of threats do they face? Because one of the key elements of these cases is that witnesses do not testify in the court. So can you elaborate some of the pressures which they have to face?
See, I'd just to elaborate further on this case, although there have been several witnesses, apart from eyewitnesses as well, who had retracted from their statements. First thing. Secondly, I'd also, and this I'd quote from Justice Dhingra's report, so that you people do not get booked under contempt of court. I'd quote that report itself. The attitude of the people from judiciary, the investigation, and the authorities at that time as well. And now I'm quoting, for example, I'd give you one example. When you say there are people who have seen their relatives, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters killing in front of their eyes, they would not be bought by money, or they would probably not get pressurized under any kind of coercion or threat. I agree to it, obviously. And when it comes to Sikhs, there has been a Sikh psyche that people generally are of very robust nature. So when it comes to their testimonies, there have been cases wherein these people they had retracted from their testimonies, but the attitude, the manner in which the judiciary or the authorities had taken them, and now I am quoting from Justice Dhingra Saab's report. I quote from page number 11 of the summary, which says that, which generally talks about how the judiciary has acted in these cases. Now it says a perusal of cases shows that in FIR number 433/84, that is 433/84 of Police Station Kalyanpuri, while the police, after clubbing various cases, sent a challan in respect of murder of 56 people. 56 लोगों का murder हुआ, इसमें 56 people. The trial court framed charges only in respect of killing of 5 persons, and no charge was framed in respect of remaining murders. So 56 लोग मरे हैं, चार्ज बने हैं सिर्फ 5 लोगों पे, मतलब 5 लोगों के मर्डर के। जो 51 लोग जिनका वो मर्डर हुआ, उनकी लाशें आइडेंटिफाई हुई, उनका हिसाब कौन देगा? 71 लोग ट्रेन से निकल के मर गए, पुलिस ने कहा हमारे पास कोई स्टाफ नहीं था, हम एक भी आदमी को नहीं पकड़ पाए जिसने मारा है। So that again brings back us to that situation, that बड़ी हैरानी की बात है कि दिल्ली शहर लाशों से पाट दिया गया और हमें 36 साल बाद भी कोई कातिल नहीं मिल रहा। That's shocking. Then you see, as far as the judiciary is coming to, the Justice Dhingra's report says none of the judgments on record show that the judges were alive to the situation of 1984 riots and were alive to the fact that for delay in lodging FIRs and statement of witnesses, the victims were not responsible. So when you say that people have retracted from their statements, or there were pressures or there were threats, yes, that is a fact which should have been taken into consideration, specifically when we have moved ahead from such, I mean, say after 84 we had seen 93, we had 2002, we had other incidents of similar nature. We had Sakshi versus Union of India judgment, we had Zahira Habibullah Sheikh judgment, we had several judgments of different high courts and the Supreme Court, wherein witness protection has been talked about a lot. There has been a lot on papers, but what have we achieved? हमें आजादी को आज गुरप्रन I believe 72-73 years हो गए, 7 दहाके से ज़्यादा हो गए हमें. So when we say we have system which is, when we say it is a somewhat oblique, or it somewhat pushes the people onto the brink of frustration in this manner wherein it takes such long time, then witness protection is the least what we can give to the witnesses. There are threat letters, there are letters circulated in the courts, there are letters circulated to lawyers, there are death threats extended to lawyers, there are threats extended to witnesses even till date, I'm saying. So these are the issues which at the governmental level needs to be taken care of.
So, as you already mentioned, that Sajjan Kumar was one of the most prominent faces of the Delhi riots. But as most of the people would be knowing, I hope that would be knowing about this case. But right now, I'm taking the matter to Karkaduma court matter, which is pending in the court, and the Mahipalpur killings, which I guess is not as much known as the Sajjan Kumar case. So, can you throw some light on these cases as well?
See, Gurkhan, when we deal with these cases, specifically because we have named these two cases, which I have seen closely and I've worked actively in these cases, apart from Sajjan Kumar's case, which was in High Court, because I tell you why. Specifically these cases, because in criminal law, you see what happens in the trial court is most important.
Exactly.
So in Mr. Kumar's case, his acquittal had already happened in 2013. It was not part of the trial at that time. I became the part of this team only when this case was, the CBI appeal was filed 1099 and the judgment came in 2018. As far as the two other cases you have mentioned, that is the Mahipalpur killings of Avtar Singh and Hardev Singh, and the Kadkaduma court case. So I have seen these trials firsthand, and I am actively a part of these trials. So there are certain issues which the lawyers also have to deal with. From legislative point of view, I'll just give you one point. I'll take 30 seconds of yours. Even after having certain incidents like these, and which have been recorded in the judicial pronouncements as well, we have failed to enact a robust law to address these issues. The Delhi High Court has also recorded this. I also say this when I see different countries how they react to these. France has a law on it. England has the Public Order Act. The Public Order Act. England has a law on it. England also has the law for compensation, which is known as Riots Damages Act. Northern Ireland has legislation on it. India, despite being such a society which is multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and has faced such traumatic experiences, has not enacted such a robust law till date. So this is one of the issues which I feel that I have encountered in every trial. That merely saying that this gentleman must be booked under IPC so and so provisions and be treated as so and so accused under so and so law, I feel this loophole must be addressed. This is the first thing when we do those trials. This is the first thing that comes to my mind. Secondly, as far as the Mahipalpur killing case is concerned, so 4 of the brothers are surviving. 2 of them were killed. Young gentlemen, young boys were killed. One of them was thrown off the first or second floor. The mob had chased them inside the house and killed them in a very brutal manner. That is recorded in the judgment as well. So one of the gentlemen, I believe he was in his teenagers at that time, who had seen his brother being killed. This gentleman was not killed because the mob had thought that he is already dead, but he had become unconscious. So while giving his statement, and he is now, I believe, a 45, 50-year-old man, while giving his statement, his gawahi in the court, in the Patiala House Court, he actually had started crying. He actually started crying inside the court. And this is well recorded in that day's order, while his testimony is recorded, जिसको हम गवाही कहते हैं, while his testimony is recorded, his examination is recorded. The gentleman actually the tears started rolling down his cheeks, and you see not only the pain he has faced in 1984, he has seen his brothers being killed. Also, the aftermath, wherein authorities had approached them, given them hopes, but they never got justice. Cases were closed, untraced, FIRs were cancelled. Then after several years, decades after decades, these gentlemen were given hope, but then nothing fruitful came out of it. So you see, when these people have, and they are traveling all the way from Punjab, obviously I would not name the exact place, but be it summers, be it winters, be it rainy season, they would travel all the way from Punjab to Patiala House Court. When we talk about justice at doorstep, this also becomes one of the issues. These people traveled all the way from Punjab and had to come come to Delhi to give their testimonies, and it started on every day they would start crying while reminiscing these incidents. As far as the Kadkaduma case is concerned, there were 7 members of the same family who have been killed. There were 2 survivors in that family, both of them brothers. One of them who's the sole witness in that case. So he witnessed these incidents. He was a young boy of, I believe, 10, 12, 13 years. He ran away from his building, and he has narrated this in the court. His testimony has gone for lasted for 2 or 3 days. Now you see, when we see this as a lawyer, for us, examination and cross-examination is just part of a process. For me, it's like we are going for a cross-examination or examination. For us, it's just part of the process, part of the trial. This gentleman, the lone eyewitness who has seen 7 members of his family being killed from the roof of his house, that is uske ghar ki jo chhat thi, what he has narrated that he ran away from there. He had chopped off his hair. He converted to मतलब वो उसने पगड़ी पहनना छोड़ दिया. उसके बाद he started off his family. Now the role of authorities also come into question in this. This is very interesting case. हो सकता है तुम लोग को फिल्मी लगे, हो सकता है तुम्हें लगे कि तुमने सिर्फ किताबों में ये पढ़ा है, बट ये आज आजाद भारत में हुआ है. These killings took place in 1984. He had a Sikh name at that time. Then later on he adopted a name which like थोड़ा जो हिंदू फैमिलीज में रखा जाता है, उसने अपना नाम बदल लिया, अपनी आइडेंटिटी बदल ली क्योंकि उसे थ्रेट था. तो what the authorities did at that time, they found out another man with the same name, और उससे इन्होंने लिखाया कि 1984 में एक रिपोर्ट आई थी कि तुम्हारे घर में इतने इतने लोगों को मार दिया गया, तो तुम यहाँ पर बताओ क्या क्या हुआ था. उसने लिख के दिया जी मैं 84 में दिल्ली में था ही नहीं, मेरे तो पिताजी की मौत ही नहीं, मेरे तो घर पे कोई मरा ही नहीं है. इतना बोल के इन्होंने केस क्लोज कर दिया. This gentleman was called in the box trial के टाइम पे, और उसने कहा कि सर मैं तो 84 के टाइम पे यहाँ था ही नहीं, मैं वो वाला आदमी हूँ ही नहीं जिसको पुलिस बनाना चाह रही है. Now this is very shocking, this is very sad, this is very unfortunate. Then the special investigation team which was set under the Ministry of Home Affairs, they found out the correct man. He had been cross-examined by battery of lawyers. मतलब उसके घर की, उसकी जिंदगी की एक एक चीज उस वक्त निकाल के कोर्ट के सामने रख दी गई है. You see, this trauma has lasted for 36-37 years. 12 people were accused in this case, out of whom 4 have already died. There are only 8 people who are of advanced age. Some of them are of advanced age now. They are standing on trial. So you see, the sense of justice, in terms of justice also, when I say the chances gets bleak, victims की जब हम बात करते हैं तो जस्टिस एन ढींगरा साहब की रिपोर्ट में भी आया, हमारे पास भी कुछ फर्स्ट हैंड अकाउंट्स ऐसे हैं. जैसे मिश्रा साहब कमीशन बनी थी 1985 में. एफआईआर हुई है जाके 1991, 92, 93 में. डिफेंस ने कई बार ये आर्गुमेंट भी लिए हैं कि सर एफआईआर फाइल होने में, एफआईआर रजिस्टर होने में 6-6, 7-7 साल का डिले है. डिफेंस ने कई बार ये आर्गुमेंट्स लिए हैं. व्हाट हैपेंस इन क्रिमिनल लॉ इज बेसिकली कई बार एक रुक्का भेजा जाता है एक पुलिस वाले से एसएचओ को या पुलिस स्टेशन को, जिसके बेसिस पे एफआईआर होती है या कोई कंप्लेन होती है. नोट भेजे गए, एफआईआर होनी थी, उसके बाद ये बोल दिया गया दैट विटनेसेस कुड नॉट कंफर्म द आइडेंटिटी ऑफ द एक्यूज्ड, इसलिए केसेस क्लोज कर दिए. So there have been certain entry cases, certain loopholes which have been taken advantage of by the other counsels as well, by the accused persons as well. For example, the other one which I had mentioned is there was this committee. I'm missing out on the name. I believe there were 10 different committees and commissions. There was one committee which was abolished by the court later on. One of the accused has taken a stay on the working of that committee itself. So a committee was formed after a commission or a committee, and there was a stay on that committee itself, and then later it was abolished. There was another Dhillon, Gurdial Singh Dhillon committee, which had recommended as far as the rehabilitation is concerned. And I'd like to wrap up the answer with this. कि जो उस कमेटी ने रेकमेंड किया था जो कि नेशनल इंश्योरेंस की जो कंपनीज हैं वो इनको मुआवजा दें, इनको कॉम्पनसेशन दें. This recommendation never saw the light of the day. Then you see there was this, I believe, Kapoor Mittal committee. There was this one committee, I believe, Justice Kapoor Mittal itself, जिसने कहा था कि 72 ऑफिसर्स की कॉन्स्पिरेसी उसने कहा था कि इसमें हो सकती है. 30 out of 72 जो थे उसका डिसमिसल उसने रेकमेंड किया था. It never happened on ground. जस्टिस ढींगरा साहब ने एसएचओ का नाम लिखा है सूरवीर त्यागी का, दैट ही डिसआर्म्ड द सिख्स ऑफ दैट एरिया, बट उसके बाद पहले उसको सस्पेंड किया सरकार ने, फिर उसके बाद उसको प्रमोशन दिया. आज जो आदमी रिटायर हुआ है एक अच्छी पोस्ट है. So there have been these kind of issues when we deal with these trials in the trial court. There are these issues which the witnesses and the lawyers and the victims grapple with on every day.
So, sir, if you can highlight what is the current status of these three cases?
So Mr. Kumar's conviction the judgment was passed in 2018. His appeal is pending in Supreme Court. His bail was dismissed in September 2020. Mr. Mahinder Yadav, who was one of the convicted guys in both that case, he has passed away. And the other case, the Mahipalpur killing, there's one gentleman who was awarded life imprisonment. The other one was awarded death penalty. Their appeals are pending in the Honorable Delhi High Court. They are in custody. Other than that, there's this one, the other case, the Kadkaduma case, which we have mentioned, is charges have been framed in 2018. Unfortunate that charge framing is the major first step of the beginning of the trial. Charges have been framed in 2018 in the month of, I believe, 19 in the month of June. So usme abhi examination chal raha hai. So it is still at the Kadkaduma case is still at the trial. And Mr. Sajjan Kumar, there is another case wherein Mr. Kumar is named as an accused. The trial is still going on at the stage of examination in Patiala. As far as Mr. Titler's case is concerned, it is pretty much talked about. It is at the case of 164 statements in the Rouse Avenue CBI court.
So, sir, as Prachi mentioned that apart from the 1984 Royd cases, you have been a champion of other cases as well. Notably, he was also one of the counsels in the DOB exam FESCO which happened. Which I had a chance to work with him quite closely. And seriously, it was one hectic of a case. Other than that, you were also an advocate, I guess, also a counsel in prison reforms case, environmental law case, other plethora of cases which Prachi has already mentioned. So what, as a first generation lawyer and as a young lawyer graduating from our prestigious law faculty, what has been your experience in the Indian judicial system?
Well, as far as the Indian judicial system is concerned, I'd say that on the aspect of legislation, we still need certain robust legislations to address several issues, be it communal violence, for that matter, witness protection, for that matter, legislation, although this is a little off the topic, for that matter, the new notification which has come to for the regulation of online platforms. So as far as the Indian judicial system is concerned, there are upsides to it, there are downsides to it. One of the upsides, I'd say, 50 years ago, there was no right to privacy, which was recognized as a fundamental right. 50 years down the line, we have developed that jurisprudence, and that has come from the courts itself, that now it is recognized as a fundamental right. So the good part about our system is that we keep on correcting our mistakes. We keep on giving ourselves chances to correct that mistakes, which symbolizes evolution, which is a good part. The downside, obviously, is the backlog of cases, is the right of speedy trial, which still people crave for. Then the witness protection, as I have already said. So there are positive things about the Indian judicial system as well, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the issues which the Indian judicial system is struggling with, be it the speedy trial, backlog of cases. The third issue which I'd say is where we can still work upon is the use of technology. For example, there are lawyers in a survey some of them have supported, some of them have opposed the online virtual hearings. So there are certain issues which can be worked on this. And I believe that's a mixed kind of views I have about the whole system.
So with these, my questions are over. So I would now hand over the platform to Abhishek, who would be, who is more than itching to ask questions which we have received either through emails or through the chat. Abhishek, please take over.
Thank you so much, Gokul, for handing me over this virtual podium.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Hora sir, for joining us. So there are a couple of questions that we received. So before that, after hearing all the stories from you, like it's very spine-chilling that even after the Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court, in the matter of Mahinder Chawla vs. Union of India, approved the witness protection scheme of 2018, the witnesses are still being harassed by different stratas of the society. So the first question that we have received is from Ms. Pihu Bharadwaj. She says, "Good evening, sir. As you said that
that's okay. Come to the question directly.
Okay.
What they are.
Okay, as you said that victims feel that they won't be able to get justice as police is not doing their job, then how should we go about it then? If police gets extra money, they don't even think about the other person. In fact, they harass the other party members.
So specifically limiting my answer to the
Yeah.
aspect of role of police in 1984 itself, I think the solution to this is, and if you'd go to the other commissions as well, which have suggested or recommended issues relating to police reform, or specifically about 1984 as well, uh, nobody can be a judge in its own case. If the CBI director or joint director himself is one of the parties in case, CBI cannot investigate and should not investigate the case themselves. I guess that's pretty clear. That's pure common sense. So if the Delhi police itself has been accused, or there have been serious allegations against the Delhi police, for that matter, any state police, or for that matter, any specific officer, firstly, there has to be strict disciplinary proceedings against that officer. Because believe me or not, any officer who's on paper, if he's not on duty, he still exert some influence directly or indirectly on the other officers. So the second thing that has to be done is that the agency which should investigate these has to be a separate agency. For example, a special investigation team, the SITs which have been constituted, CBI for that matter, when the cases relate to Delhi police. So I believe there has to be a separation of the agency which investigate the case when there are specific allegations against a particular agency itself, and that also what a principle of natural justice says. So when Delhi police is investigating the cases against Delhi police, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, the problem that the accused is Delhi police and the investigator is the Delhi police, and that's why maybe. So the next question, sir, till what extent social media is responsible for modern rioting incidents and adding insult to the injury of victims slash witnesses?
Well, I believe everything which has its own advantages has its own disadvantages as well. As far as social media is concerned, it developed as a tool for communication, for broadcasting messages, for mass communication. But the manner in which it is now being misused by certain people for their own oblique motives, be it people from the political side, from those who intended to inflict communal violence for their own narrow gains. I'd agree to that statement that, as I said, everything which comes with its advantages comes with its disadvantages as well. When I talk about 1984, you did not have social media back then. In 1947, you did not have social media back then. Had social media been there, it would have caused the same negative impact at that time. Why? Because the negative word travels fast. In 2020, and there have been certain instances when I believe some years ago, SMS forwards were suspended for a particular time
Mm-hmm.
in certain areas where some disturbance is happening. So I believe, yes, it is a double-edged sword, and this needs to be checked in terms of disturbances, because in case of rioting, mob violence, looting, arsoning, social media plays an important role for bringing peace and for bringing destruction.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is that is from Chiragulati. Says, can you draw any similarity between 1984 genocide with the 1947 pogrom? That's at the time of partition. Was it spontaneous or pre-planned, considering the situation circumstances pertaining to political atmosphere during those times?
Well, see, yes, there are similarities as far as the killing of people is concerned. There are similarities because that was also in one or the other way violence based on communal angle itself. But then there are certain dissimilarities as well. For example, in 1947, people could have seen the impending violence. People could have foreseen that there would be mass migration, displacement. In 1984, this was not the case, unfortunately. You wake up at 6 a.m., you wake up at 7 a.m., and you suddenly get a message, because there was no social media, obviously, but you get a message from your neighbors, from the priest in the Gurdwara, that certain people have started killing Sardars in some XYZ area, and now the mob is approaching this area as well. So yes, 1947, the manner in which people from certain communities were killed, yes, this happened in 1947 as well, which was unfortunate. but at that time the country was undergoing division. In 1984, we cannot be dismissive of this fact that this was an organized pogrom to kill our own people, which is unfortunate.
Okay. So the next question comes from Vasuman Chandra. Sir, is there any feasible provision to hold the miscreant police officers accountable and liable?
Yes, there are provisions in the IPC. There are provisions in the police manual itself. There are provisions in the disciplinary manuals as well.
Okay. So the last question for today is from Kumar Karan Singh. Can it be said that the situation is such due to lack of a robust legislation dealing with riots? Does the state want to escape accountability by not legislating a robust legislation?
If you want to ask me a question off the record, I'd say yes. If you want to ask me on the record, I'd say yes. Unfortunate, but yes. Let us call a spade a spade. If the state wants to tie people and bind them, the state can and the state should. If you don't want to bind them, then you have 100 excuses. You may take any one out of those.
So just to add to it, what I
Yes.
particularly wanted to ask was, like, while going to the provisions of IPC, what they mean is that you have to show a common intention and things like that. If you have a robust legislation of people, a person doing an act in Mangolpuri has an intention which needs to be done in India. It's not just a single intention under 120B.
Right.
Secondly, if you go to the provisions, there's a imprisonment for 2 years, 3 years. For an intention, you want to like clear a whole community.
I'd answer that. I'd answer that question. You read the Mr. Kumar's judgment. I'd quote that. The criminals responsible for the mass crimes have enjoyed political patronage and managed to evade prosecution and punishment. Although this does not answer your question, but still, hold on. Bringing such criminals to justice poses a serious challenge to our legal system, as these appeals themselves demonstrate. Decades pass by before they can be made answerable. This calls for strengthening the legal system. Neither crime against humanity nor genocide is part of our domestic law of crime. This loophole needs to be addressed urgently. Now, when you talk about the inadequate sentencing, I completely agree to you. When people are killed in such manner with a clear intention, and I would not mince my words saying that people were killed with a clear intention. There were efforts to kill people from the Sikh community for that matter in 1984. This calls for enhanced sentencing. This calls for binding people in the strictest sense. And this should not have this. These are not the cases which should have lingered on for 36 years. This has not, and I'm sorry to say this, but this has in no way alleviated or removed the pains of people who have suffered in 1984. This has rather added more insults to what they have suffered. I'm really sorry to say this. I come from a family of 1984 victims myself, and I feel that this has rather added to their pain and their trauma. This needs to be addressed, because this pattern has repeated several times. All right, Abhishek, are we done?
I think one more question that we have here. I think Kaur, your answer is your question answered. Gurpreet Singh says 36 years later, no justice. How do you still manage to repose your faith in the Constitution? It's rather a personal question.
Well, see, these are young guys working in Legally Yours. Why do you want to get these people booked under contempt of court? Come on.
I think fair criticism is not contempt.
No, I'd still not say that.
You have seen Kunal Kamara right now.
Gurpreet, I'd answer.
What can be said about him?
Guys, please talk about him when I am done with this webinar. I do not want to be part of that discussion. Anyways, to answer the question which Gurpreet has asked, and Gurpreet has asked a very valid question. Being personally coming from a family of 1984 affected people, when I say that, this brings a feeling of alienation. There were people who had at that time, and even today they say that 15 अगस्त 26 जनवरी हम मनाते हैं, तो देश को आप देश कैसे कह सकते हैं जहाँ पर आपके साथ इतना कुछ हो रहा है, कोई कुछ कर नहीं रहा, कोई कुछ कह नहीं रहा. Prominence में ये बातें नहीं आती हैं. These things come to shoot into headlines only in the month of June, when Operation Blue Star had happened, and only in the month of November when these killings had happened in different parts of India, including Delhi. So Gurpreet, as far as the question of my faith in the Constitution is concerned, there could be issues with the Constitution. All of us are fallible. There is no issue about it. But when we live in a country with so many laws that even if you have to change lanes while driving a car, you must switch on your indicator. I do not understand that how 71 people can get killed in police stations of Delhi and not even one person is identified. Now, this is not a question on the Constitution. This, Gurpreet, is a question on the working of people and the way this system has treated its own citizens. Unfortunate, sad, and I'd say they have done a stepmotherly, the authorities have done a stepmotherly treatment with these people, and I'm using very mild words for that matter. I've done a stepmotherly treatment. There is no problem with the Constitution in that sense. The problem is with the people who have to act under that Constitution. So that's I did not want it to end on a sad note, but since we talk about the reposing my faith in the Constitution, the problem is this brings my faith, reposing my faith in the authorities into question. For example, if somebody tomorrow, your kids or my kids ask me that कल को हमारे साथ ऐसा हो जाता है तो हमारे साथ भी क्या authorities तब भी ऐसे ही करेंगे, you would not have a yes or no answer, and that is what makes me sad. I'll leave that question there itself.
Thank you so much, sir. I don't think you need to apologize for that, for leaving it in a serious tone. I don't think we have a positive answer to that, because faith in law is stirred now and then. So okay. So let me, I think on this point, let me shift this virtual podium to my friend Tanvi. Tanvi, please go on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek. I, Tanvi Sharma, on behalf of the entire team of Legally Yours, extend a hearty vote of thanks to our esteemed guest, Advocate Harpreet Singh Hora, who spared time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today, we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on the topic, legal struggles of right victims, and they have surely enlightened our mind. I must mention a deep sense of appreciation for Advocate Harpreet Singh Hora for his explanation of the legal challenges faced by the right victims, with special emphasis on the delay in justice, the plight of victims, his own experience in representing them, and the lacunae in the investigation process. I would also like to acknowledge Advocate Hora's contribution in all other important cases, such as installation of cameras in Tihar jail, representing students of various institutes in issues involving admission and numerous other matters. Sir, your wise words and your diverse work in the field of law are truly inspirational. Lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for being with us this evening. I request you all to kindly subscribe to our website, Legally Yours, to get regular updates of the upcoming events and other legal matters. Thank you, sir. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, sir.
So before
Thank you,
leaving,
Renu.
before leaving, जो भी लोग रह गए हैं, kindly do visit us on legallyyours.bitrix24.site and do join our newsletter for getting our regular updates on the stuff we put on the on our website, and we put a variety of stuff over there. Thank you so much for joining us. This was Legally Yours, presenting a conversation on legal rights, legal struggles of riot victims with Advocate Harpreet Singh Hora. Thank you so much. Have a good day.